And there is no doubt these are crimes against humanity. The United States has formally determined that Russia has committed crimes against humanity. And I say to all those who have perpetrated these crimes and to their superiors who are complicit in these crimes, you will be held to account. In the face of these indisputable facts, to all of us here in Munich, let us renew our commitment to accountability. Let us renew our commitment to the rule of law.
Hey, welcome back to the Convo Couch, or Naturalist Capitalist, Don DeBar, hey. AM Wake Up. We got so many shows, but thank you so much. We are actually in DC for the Rage Against the War Machine rally, and this is kind of cool here because I got my old school mentor over here, Don DeBar, Marxist, and my new friend, Reed Coverdale. I don't want to say libertarian if you're not a libertarian, but okay, you want a minute on, we're live, dude.
Oh, yeah, I know.
We're live and stuff like that. But guys, please, welcome to the show. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Thanks for having me on, man.
No doubt. So what do you guys think about this rally going on? And what do you think about Kamala Harris? I mean, she's giving us material to work with right over here. It's stuff I might have to add to the speech. But it still seems they want to hold Russia accountable. They want to keep funding weapons to the Zelensky regime. And it is a regime. Right, it's a puppet government since 2014. Your thoughts on what's going on and what's taking place over here in D.C., brother?
Well, first, it's actually like a junta at this point. The Rada is, it's a rubber stamp. There's been purges of the, people that were first appointed. The elections were taking place under the auspices of a government installed, a regime installed by a coup. So, I mean, we're talking really about a junta. She's talking about accountability and legal process and all of this, and makes a statement that there's been basically a determination made by a finding made by the U.S. government. So somebody sent me this about an hour ago from Press TV, and I sent this I'll read you what I sent to them. My question is, what does she mean by a process? No public process has been conducted. When you have a process, it's public. They try you for a traffic ticket. There's a public trial. War crimes, no public trial. If there is a process, by what right does that process claim jurisdiction over Russia? In international relations, unless you've signed a treaty submitting your country to the jurisdiction of whatever fact finder or court is going to hear cases, they have only the power they can impose by force of arms, which, by the way, can't be done legally without the approval of the UN Security Council. And I'm just going to assume, because I'm kind of mischievous that way, that if someone introduces a resolution at the UN Security Council to blow up Russia, Russia will veto it, and China will probably veto it too, just for chuckles.
Yeah.
And then, she was a prosecutor. She's supposed to know this stuff. She's talking about a prosecution, basically. She was a prosecutor as her career. And if she doesn't know that, so anyway, she should be able to understand this stuff. And if she's going to charge someone with war crimes, her understanding of the process. We had this. There was this, hearing or trial or whatever. There was this adjudication. This is the sentence or the prescribed outcome of this, and we're coming for you under Article 5 of this treaty or.
But you don't need that, do you? AUMF,
right?
The authorized use of military force. Right. You don't even need to go to Congress. You can say whatever you want. Our White House, our staff, 6 people in the room determined that we want to go to war with Russia. We can go to Russia. Reed, your thoughts, and we'll bounce back and forth on what Kamala is saying, because Don is right. There is no freaking process
That's
here.
right.
So
Yeah, I mean, I just think it's incredible that the people think that this is somehow humanitarian toward the people of Ukraine. That keeping this thing going and funneling tons of money and weapons, and the lack of negotiations that are taking place is what's really shocking to me. Because even during the Cold War, there was more cross-examination and talks with adversaries than what's happening right now. Right now, everything is cut off. The United States has even, I saw a report the other day on antiwar.com that the United States is telling Ukraine to not sit down at the table with Russia until they take back a certain amount of territory. So, talking crimes against humanity, I think we're at fault here for the amount of slaughter that we've incurred over the last year and a half. And even before that, going back to 2014, shelling the Donbass and, just putting that puppet government in place in the first place. Like, I don't know. I think we're pointing the finger in the wrong direction.
Yeah, the wrong finger too.
yeah, let me move this over to as well. Wrong thing. Well, let me say, you just mentioned the fact that there's no process, and that's just mind blowing because, and you've been around, you're an anti-war activist for a long time. I don't want to reveal your age, Don, but
In 1970, when I was staring down the wrong end of the barrel of the draft
yes,
to go to Vietnam, it was the first time I went to an anti-war rally, and I had just lost 3 years and 6 years prior, 2 of my cousins in Vietnam. And then 3 years after the second one, it was my turn to turn 18. I was like, So yeah, so you're talking 53 years.
yeah. So you understand that there's always a process. There's always like it has to go either to the UN, congressional hearings. Congress has got to approve of this, but they've abdicated all their responsibilities, Congress, to the executive branch. They did this with the AUMF. I said this was the most dangerous thing other than the Patriot Act, and I'm an election integrity activist. HAVA, all 3 of these came out of a Republican-controlled Congress, a Republican White House and George W. Bush. But even though you're kind of, perplexed, I should say, a little bit stunned, and I see a lot of libertarians and anti-war, the fact that there's no negotiations on the table, what really gets me is the fact that the public is bought into this. I mean, that's what's so important about this rally is that we got to somehow grab the public and jolt them because we don't have media in the mainstream. We have propaganda. Your thoughts on that?
Don't you think there's more mainstream opposition to this than there was the Iraq War, though maybe not in media, but talking to average people, I know, especially on the right, there's a lot of people who are like, I don't really understand why we're doing this with Ukraine. And way more than there was against the Iraq War back in 2003.
Yes. Well, because it was a Republican White House then. Yeah. And at the Thanksgiving table, my uncles was trying to justify Saddam Hussein is the next Hitler because his team was calling the shots. Team sports are being played now like they're being played then. If Biden was in the White House and this was Donald Trump doing this, all the Republicans would be cool with it. And we know for a fact, I don't know we know for a fact, but this is something that we've all been aware of, is I think that the conservatives are making this a partisan issue to blame Biden. This is Biden's war. And they have no problem taking out that money from Kiev and getting out of this proxy war against Moscow and putting it in Taiwan and starting a proxy war against Beijing. So that's where I feel on that.
You got to watch, first of all, there's a couple of pieces of history that are germane here. And it's funny, I'm looking at preparing for this weekend and the attack on, basically this is a call for unity saying that if we're going to stop this with the limited amount of time that we have really to stop it, these guys are going balls out for this, that we have to display like really broad unity across the political spectrum, but the elite's not going to hear it. So I went digging through materials, particularly around the February 15th and March 20th anti-war rallies in 2003.
Which you participated in.
I helped organize some of it. And so anyway, so I have videotape of the work that we were doing and then some of the stuff from the 15th, which I have this huge library of tape. As I use stuff, I'm capturing it. Okay, mm-hmm. So when I'm capturing it, something that I'm going to be working on right now, I watch it as it gets captured. So I'm doing that day before yesterday. It was the 15th actually, so Wednesday or Tuesday, whatever. And I'm remembering we had organized. I was doing the morning segment once a week on WBAI in New York City, covering the northern suburbs, Hudson Valley. They also had someone on Long Island doing that and someone in New Jersey doing that. And between the three of us, when they announced on February 15th there was going to be an anti-war rally, we decided we would use the railroad, commuter railroad, as a means of organizing. So we formed something called Peace Train Coalition.
Peace Train
Yep,
Coalition.
and we did basically publicity with that. I produced a TV spot and I bought a bunch of airtime on what News 12 was the local news channel.
Yeah.
The local inserts for CNN.
What was the date again?
February 15th, 2003.
2003.
Right.
How many people were you expecting at that rally?
It had snowed February 14th, 2003. There was almost a foot of snow on the ground. And in Manhattan, it takes them a while to get rid of it because there's no place to put it except in the rivers.
You better go to work there, Reed. They need your help. It's snow.
Yeah.
So we got down to the train in Ossining, and we're waiting for it. And it was like, wow, a lot of people showed up. Train goes by, it doesn't stop.
Yeah.
Packed to the gills.
People hanging out the
I
windows.
said, what the hell? Practically, and so they make an announcement that because of the heavy traffic today, that they have extra trains to stay there. There'll be another one along. So I'm like, whoa, there must have been a football game today or something, Yankee Stadium or whatever. We get on the train and it's packed already. We're only the second stop. And it's going to go because the train I was on leaves from Croton Harmon to New York City. And it's Croton Harmon, Ossining, and then about 15 other stops. That one's filled up. And I'm watching people try to get on it. And then there's another train and et cetera. We get off the train into Grand Central Station and it looked like New Year's Eve. The entire big room was like a mob. And then we went out on the street and there was a mob, not on the sidewalks, but in the street.
Yes.
42nd Street was closed and full of bodies that were heading east to where the thing was. We're like, holy shit. Okay, so when we got to, where the radio, TV, whatever, found out what was going on, we found out that the whole world was like that. That it was the largest anti-war rally across the world
20 years ago.
that day, 20 years ago this past week, in history. And the media didn't cover it at all until after the fact. But after the fact, they started referring to it as the anti-war movement as the second superpower in the world, because there were so many people that had demonstrated this. That's in February. March 20th, there was another call for this, and it was big, but it was nowhere near that big. By March 23rd, 24th, the call was to end Bush's war.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of that at the rally even. There were
Yeah.
pictures of Bush with his head sliced open and, empty warhead and stuff like this. They personalized it. And so Democrats
Did it kill the?
There it goes. Now it would be better. Sorry.
So you're on.
I do apologize. Oh, let me see. We need to make sure. I think we're fine. I was like, why is the not looking so great?
That's just me.
No, you're fine.
I didn't get enough sleep.
It's okay.
Are
Okay,
you still live?
I believe so.
Yeah.
This should be better now. So is the stream?
I think it must have been on my phone because the Wi-Fi must be kicking in and out.
Can you turn your hotspot off?
I can turn it off, but
All right, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties. Let's see if we get it back.
Anyone who watches my show, you know that I have technical difficulties all the time. We're using my equipment, so I really take full responsibility for this.
He's got some bad juju he's carrying around with him.
Let's see if it comes back up.
Yeah, it looks like it's working. Maybe.
There we are.
Okay.
I think. Let's hope it's not.
Yeah.
It's live.
Nice.
Here. So,
With
Get
Twitter.
rid of that one, right?
I guess we're not.
That's
playing.
Twit, not Twitter. Oh.
All right,
There you go.
it should be.
Okay.
All right. We're back on. I
This
think.
is lagging. It's not live. Oh, there we go. Now we're live.
Okay, so and you got a little bit more juice. Okay, guys, sorry about that. We're having connection issues. Who knows with the internet? I'm gonna call and bitch about that and complain. Maybe we're just gonna unplug it and do it later.
Let me finish my point.
Yeah, please. Where were we at though? We were at.
I was talking about February 15th
Go ahead.
and how we got into the city and found out, how huge this rally was. And by surprise, nobody expected anything. And after a time, even though they didn't help us organize it at all, the mainstream media had to acknowledge it as a phenomenon.
Yeah.
And they referred to it at the beginning as the world's second superpower, because just there were so damn many people that were obviously opposed to the war. That the grounds of opposition were defined as being opposition to Bush's war,
Yes.
and therefore sides were chosen up between Democrats and Republicans, basically.
Mhm.
And in my mind, that meant the elite could carry on the war without worrying about their power being challenged, because only one fraction of the whole, one faction in the political sphere, would be against them for doing this.
Yeah.
And they'd have one leg on solid ground,
Yeah.
which is what they did. And it was so successful.
Do you think it was co-opted then of sorts? Or
No, it was managed.
managed?
And it was so successful. Democrats took up the cry, basically, anybody but Bush, because this is Bush's war.
Yeah.
Anybody but Bush. So we got carried. And April of, we're talking February 15th, 2003.
Yeah.
By April of 2004, Kerry, who had voted for the war,
Yes.
was asked, would you change your vote? And he's running for president. And he said, nope, I wouldn't change my vote at all. Not knowing what I know now, I would still do exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
And so it was in my opinion, looking back, it was the partisan nature, the making of this as a partisan issue that enabled them to continue and move forward. This is a mistake we can't make this time.
We are going to make it again.
Okay. We're looking at just, okay, so you've got the only people voting against this in Congress now are Republicans. And people said, this opportunistic, and you were saying, and it's a good argument, but for a good number of them, this is how we go after Biden, because Biden is doing this. If Biden made the sunrise, would be against sunrise, just to be against Biden. And there's truth in that. But there's also somebody in that, in my estimate, is doing some tea leaf reading and understands that part of their constituency is actually opposed to war. And the reason I say that is what I saw at the Republican Tony Montero when I went to both conventions that year. And I was in the hall when he did his final speech after spending 4 days interviewing the Republican apparatus, basically, about this question and that question and that question. Mainly they were there and supporting Trump because he said they were going to get their jobs back. Trump said no more regime change, no more nation building, no more of these wars. He got the first standing ovation he had in the speech.
Gotcha.
This is the assembled district leaders, municipal officials, etc., of the Republican Party 7 years ago, 6.5 years ago.
Yeah.
So that sentiment exists in their constituency. The Democrats, and particularly Black Democrats, were for many years the most consistently anti-war constituency out of the electorate, anyway, in the United States. And after Russiagate, they are the most supportive
Of war.
of this war now.
Yeah.
and that's a problem.
Well, let's talk about that 1 second, Reed. Interesting, because we were talking about this right now. Of anybody who's said they're going to run for president, Trump's the best one there. Can you give a little bit? I mean, and
So
I'm not
right
gonna
now-
I'm not gonna ever vote for Trump.
No.
I'm waiting to see who the Libertarian candidate is.
But even if there's a good libertarian candidate, it doesn't matter. They're not going to win.
Well,
Yeah, but we can get
who's against the
5%,
war
right?
right now. Out of all of them, who's saying stop this stupid war?
Trump. So
What do? You
you
can't
have-
not vote for the guy that's the only one saying it.
Yeah, but he wants a war with Beijing.
Yeah, but we got to survive the war with Russia first.
All right, we'll retable
Okay, so
that.
right now, assuming Joe Biden is the Democrat who runs for re-election, you have Nikki Haley, who's just jumped into the ring, who was just campaigning in New Hampshire over the weekend.
Pro-war.
You have Ron DeSantis, who might jump in. If
Who's
you
not pro-war.
look at his congressional
Latin
voting
America
record,
war.
I mean,
Pro-Israel.
lots of people don't know
Yeah.
he was in Congress for 8 years, and he didn't just vote for bad bills; he sponsored
Yeah, wrote some of them.
dozens of bad bills.
In the Florida legislation,
No, in the
Congress?
U.S. Congress.
U.S. Congress.
Yeah.
In the House.
He was in there from 2012 to
Yeah, yeah.
2020, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
He's awful. And then you have John Bolton, who's John McCain 2.0.
Pompeo?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Pompeo, who I don't, has he officially declared yet? Or-
No,
but he's looking at it.
Yeah.
And then you have Trump. So the guy who dropped more bombs than Obama and who, airstriked Soleimani and who
Abraham Accords, which means he gave away land from the Western Saharan people to Morocco. A lot of
Yeah.
people don't talk about that. Just gave that to them.
who escalated tensions in Somalia, did all this horrible stuff.
A lot of
He is the most anti-war guy
Yeah.
running for president. So we're not
Yeah.
looking good.
Yeah, we're not talking anti-war in the case of the political, the electoral political landscape. We're talking here about we are right now at war with Russia. Can we not be at war with Russia and then figure out what to do next? And then we can all mud wrestle.
How? This freaking
Well, I've
internet.
made the argument that maybe it's actually better having Biden in office because he's so bad that you have.
It's easy to fundraise and rally people.
Yes, it's easy to garner opposition to Biden. Once Trump gets in there, it's because a lot of people don't realize that Trump actually started the lethal aid to Ukraine. Obama gave them logistical support, but he never gave them weapons. And
Yeah, but
Trump,
wait a second. Israel has to the United States.
sure, but I'm
So-
saying all I'm saying is Trump gets absolved of a lot of the escalation.
It was Obama's freaking
Yeah.
State
Yeah,
Department
no,
with Victoria
of
Nuland and
course it
Jeffrey
was.
Pyatt handing out cookies on the Maidan. So,
Yeah,
Of course, but my point is, with Trump, he did all sorts of awful
Yeah.
stuff to escalate the war, and he got almost no heat for it. In fact, he got called a Russian traitor
for having that phone
for.
call.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my point is, like with Biden, he's so transparently awful
Yeah.
that it's a lot easier to rally people against him than if Trump gets back in there, and will probably continue a lot of the same policies, but it'll mostly get ignored or swept under the rug.
You're making an argument for a lefty like me that the only solution is revolution. I mean, I agree with that. Okay, but we're not going to have one yet. And I also, the argument part, the implicit in your argument, which I don't disagree with either, by the way, but you have to really examine it closely before making it, is that heightening the contradictions can be a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
But, heightening the contradictions usually happens on the back of somebody.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for example, if you really want to people to understand the value of housing and how bad it is for homelessness, expand homelessness so everybody gets homeless and then they'll get it. That's kind of the logic of it. That's what they did with the draft, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
The way we're going to end war is to end the feeling of being immune to war that some slice of the population has because they can get out of the draft. And it was crazy. What they did was play the other side of it, actually. All of us were opposed to the war because we were going to get drafted. And as soon as they took that away, people were like, okay, mission accomplished. Go ahead, blow up whatever you want.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the way I look at a lot of this is the only way to stop any of it is pushback from the states with things like defend the guard legislation. And I think it's a lot easier to states to not let Joe Biden send the National Guard overseas unless there's a
It's a
declaration
tactic for
of
sure.
war.
That's a good tactic.
I mean, because once Donald Trump is president, they might be like, oh, well, if Trump wants to send our boys over there, he must have a good reason.
Yeah.
You know,
Well,
and
at some
that's all
states,
gone.
some Democratic governors will say, well, now it's allowed here too.
Mhm.
The other thing, in that we talk, Kucinich is going to be one of the speakers at the rally on Sunday.
Who signed Hava, even though I love him?
There's a lot. Everybody comes with contradictions.
I know.
But one thing that he did, you had Obama decided really in February of 2011, war on Libya was a good idea, and so we're going to do it. Went to the UN, extracted the best language he could, favorable towards that, and generally, not really authorizing it. And starts bombing on March 20th. Starts bombing the hell out of Libya, which continues unabated until October 20th, when they killed Muammar Gaddafi. In was it 60 or 90 days, 120 days, whatever, after hostilities begin, quote unquote, after March 20th, Congress is supposed to, under the War Powers Resolution, have the president tell us, okay, what exactly is going on? What are your plans? And we have to authorize any further activity. And that didn't happen. And Pelosi wouldn't push it through. So Kucinich and a bipartisan group of a total of 10 members of Congress brought a federal lawsuit against Obama and Gates and whoever else were in charge of conducting the war. And the court sat on that case. Well, first, so they said this is an illegal violation of both the constitutional provisions for Congress making war and also the War Powers Act, War Powers Resolution, et cetera. We want this violation. They compel either an end to the war or for him to come into compliance and wait for some authorization from. I think we're not live, right?
We're live.
Okay. And they General Eric, just because we're bombing every city in Libya 11 and a half hours a day, every day, they're not firing back at us. So there's no hostilities under the definition of hostilities for the War Powers Act. So it's not invoked. The court, for some reason, that they made that argument in June, I think, couldn't come up with a decision, even a TR, a temporary restraining order. They left it alone until the 20th of October, when Gaddafi was killed. They set the lawsuit aside, saying it was moot. Because the real objective, nobody declared it or stated it through a process like Kamala Harris says. The real objective was to kill Muammar Gaddafi and destroy the Jamahiriya. And on the 20th of October, mission accomplished. And so the lawsuit was moot.
And they've been doing this for so long, and the problem is, more than anything, is that the public doesn't give a damn. It allows its government to continue to do what it wants to do, get caught up in all the culture war bullshits, start screaming at each other, and we have nothing but endless war. And it's like Steve said on my show the other day. He goes, you go have people who join the war, they'll be like, you're doing over there and over there. You won't believe what they made me do.
Yeah.
And we're so distant from it.
Yeah, we don't hear it.
We don't hear it. It doesn't affect our lives. I said the other day, and Reed, I'm kind of curious about this too. Your thoughts. Do you ever think there's going to be an attack or a bomb on the homeland? It's not that I want one, but what is it really going to take for people to go, wait a second, maybe we shouldn't allow our government to be supporting death and destruction to all these crazy, radical fucking groups, whether it be in Ukraine, whether it be the Mujahideen, whether it be in Latin America. We support the craziest of crazies, and they do some awful fucking things.
Yeah.
I think that would actually backfire, because we were supporting Israel and we had bases in Saudi Arabia and we're bombing Iraq.
Yeah.
And what did we get? We got 9/11. And instead of people being like, maybe we shouldn't do this anymore, it was, why do they hate us? Oh, they hate us because we're free and we need to go invade them. So I understand what point you're making, but I think if there were an attack, it would actually, one reason that I think this war has more mainstream opposition than the Iraq war did is because 9/11 got so many people angry that they felt like we just needed to do something. So
that was the thing.
It didn't even matter if it made sense.
Saddam Hussein is not close with Osama bin Laden. It doesn't make a difference.
Yeah, that's right.
But
a Muslim's a Muslim. Go bomb them. Like,
exactly.
nah, it's a Sunni and a Shia. You know, the difference.
So I don't think an attack would actually
wake up.
I think
people.
It would be worse. I think it would make them
make us more like, You know what? That's interesting. I mean, because you're right, because they wanted some type of bombing for something. But
yeah, I mean, I'm sure that's exactly what the military industrial complex would want, actually, is some sort of terrorist attack.
So they can, they can go on more excuses.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, how's it been looking? It looks like it's doing okay. It's weird because our internet, I keep checking the internet read, and I'm getting like crazy striking speed over here. Maybe next thing we'll turn your phone off and see if that works. I don't know.
Yeah, next stream.
Next stream. We can't do it midstream, guys, but we're gonna do a couple more streams like this throughout the day. Don DeBar is here. Jeremy Kumarov is in town. Do you know Jeremy?
Yes.
He's in town. Hopefully we'll see him
Cool.
later.
Excellent.
Courtney Banks is coming on in. Wyatt Reed. We don't know if we'll see Eric today. Probably not. But we'll see him tomorrow at the rally. So there's people just coming on in throughout the whole day, and we'll be talking about these things. So let's just wrap this up and talk about what you expect. So Daniel, we gotta get here it is. Drink together. So your overall thoughts, Reed, why don't we wrap it up on what you're expecting out of tomorrow, and
Sure.
what do you think Unity looks like moving forward? I mean, we obviously can do more shows, but what else can we do to kind of coalesce this bond?
I really agree with what Ron Paul said about coalitions versus moderation. I mean, a lot of people feel like in order to accomplish anything, we basically need to compromise on most of the stuff we believe in and coalesce around a couple important issues.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's true. I mean, I disagree with you guys on all sorts of stuff, but it doesn't matter.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to show that we don't need to agree on economics or, some other
No,
stuff.
if you want to think that capitalism really can work, go ahead. You can have that pipe dream. We're over here somewhere else.
Yeah. So no, but I do think it's important to make it clear that we're not going to meet in the middle on anything. We're just coming and agreeing that this is an important issue. So anyone who wants, and I used to think the other way. I used to think hey, we need to give up on all this stuff and kind of just form this party that unites around some basic middle of the road stuff. And I don't think that's true anymore. I think it's be yourself, believe what you believe, but regardless of who the person you're allying with thinks on some, Dennis Kucinich and I have opposite views on gun control. He wants to ban handguns. I think that's crazy, but I don't care. I'm here at the rally with him. He doesn't want to enter World War III. So I think that's the way forward, is not thinking we have to agree on the other stuff. It's just realizing, hey, we do agree on this one issue. So
and there's some issues there, libertarians and leftists. We are for freedom of speech.
Yep.
We're for freedom of a press. We're anti-imperialist and anti-regime change. So we're there on certain things. Donnie D, 20 years later, baby, you're here. DC, not New York, another anti-war rally. It was almost like Iraq was going to be, it set the Middle East on fire, but here you are again. Your thoughts on what's going on? And let me ask you a question. What are your thoughts on the anti-war movement that you have been involved with so long that's been somewhat non-existent or a little bit, I don't want to say a failure, but I want your thoughts on it because you worked with a lot of these people for many years.
All right. So, I laid out the landscape around February 15th and March 20th, 2003, in terms of the long-range consequences of it in the game that was played, political, partisan political nonsense. The salient fact is that 33 days after February 15th, 33 days after the formation of the second global superpower, we got shock and awe. So the thing itself intrinsically did not chill the elite from going ahead full blast with the war on Iraq. Okay, so right now, when they go full blast, if we let them go full blast on this war, we're looking at a global war, whether it's nuclear or not. that the Russians can blow up New York City without using nuclear weapons. Okay. And when we start blowing up stuff inside Russia, they're going to start blowing up stuff here. They know who they're fighting. They're not fighting Zelensky. Okay. They're fighting the U.S. military and the U.S. intelligence services and the puppetry in Europe and in Japan if they decide to go along with that. So we have to figure out what is it exactly that they're going to look at that's going to chill them from doing it, or we're going to suffer it. I mean, the point of this isn't to organize or to be against war. That is to stop blowing off. The only thing I see doing that, the only thing that threatens the power of the elite here is a unified, I'm going to use the term working class, but we can use the term including the middle class and everybody else, using the language of Occupy, or it's even prevalent language, a unified 99%.
Yeah.
If we're standing shoulder to shoulder saying, don't do this one thing or you're done, I don't know that it's going to work, but I do know not a damn thing else is going to work. And so we at least need to try it.
Well, you had mentioned before that fucking rally scared the shit out of them, seeing people in the streets like that. They were like, oh, wait, we haven't seen this since Nam. So if we can recreate that, and we are in different times. So for us, I think our job, like you said, and I want you to reiterate this, is to go get this material, get all the footage, and get it back out there, start pumping it up. Also, form coalitions now. Like, I'm going to go shake all these libertarians' hands and saying, hey, come on my show. I'll go on your show. Let's do this. Let's have a talk. Let's say that. So I think that's important. So why don't you tell us about what you said to me about what we need to do? Because it's 2023. We're a little bit tied to our computer as a society. We're not as out there too as well. So
one quick interjection that I
Go
think the way they tear it apart is with identity politics.
yes.
That's kind of how every right-wing movement, left-wing movement, bipartisan movement, they always tear it apart by getting people to care about some dumb bullshit instead of the actual core of the issue.
Even some of the things that are important, at least to the people who do. Look here. Okay, so I go back to 1917, and don't hold against me the fact that I'm discussing the historical events around the Russian Revolution. It has nothing to do with my like or dislike of it or my position on the left, right, or sideways. It's an analysis of an historical event. Coming out of World War I, actually towards the tail end of it in World War I, Russia, one of the places where the war was being fought brutally, had its military beaten, exhausted. And the military itself, they demanded peace. They wanted an end to the war. There were mutinies, famous mutinies, naval mutiny, for example. The military was up arms. The demand was peace. The war was fought partly in Russia, also in Europe. So you had Russia, was at the time feudal in the countryside and industrial in the cities. And so with the breakdown of society, the food being produced in the countryside wasn't making it to the cities. The cities, you had people dying of starvation and also poverty. They couldn't trade with the rest of Europe because Europe was in a war. And so they started dying. Their demand was bread. People in the countryside, they were mostly serfs. The peasantry, they lived basically like serfs. They had been freed in the 19th century formally, but they lived like tenant farmers lived after the end of slavery here. And so you had three constituencies already organized around these issues: bread in the cities, land in the countryside, peace among the military.
Yeah.
Lenin and the Bolsheviks pick up a sign and walk the country: bread, land, peace. You go past the city, a line forms behind bread. You go past the countryside, a line forms around peace. Next thing you know, you have a mob that takes the country.
Yeah.
That's what we got to do. We don't need The organizers need to see this. We don't have to convince the constituents that they need to get along with the other people.
Yeah.
They need to be convinced that we have to stop the war, period. And where they are, organize the people who think just like you, get in and do something that's going to stop the war. We'll settle all the other business later. Last thought is this. A bunch of radioactive wisps of steam have no ideological differences.
End of story.
Yep. I hope not. But
Well, guys, that's the first one for today. We're going to figure out the stuff with the internet issues. We'll get that working, but we do see that the number's been climbing on YouTube, Rumble, and on Rockfin. So thank you, guys. We'll be here all day. Don DeBar, Marxist, Reed, Libertarian, Pasta. Who knows what the hell I am? I call myself a leftist libertarian, but I'm more like a libertarian socialist is what I kind of, because I know you libertarians have a hard time understanding that libertarian came out of socialism. It did.
It did, yeah.
But anyways, we're busting balls. We're going to have a good time, guys. We're here. Thank you so much for joining in. Make sure you go to the Naturalist Capitalist. Is it Naturalist or Naturalist?
Naturalist. Yeah.
Naturalist Capitalist. Go to that YouTube, sign up for that, go to that Rumble. We'll probably do 1 or 2 from there today because we can move all around. And we'll be here throughout the day. For Don DeBar, Reed Coverdale, Pasta Jardula, we'll see you later, guys. Watch for us all day. Let me get to my little thing over here. Hold on. We love you guys.